time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
I want to go a different direction for the bowl game. And talking to Brian, I said, listen, I just want to be balanced. I want to dictate the tempo of the game, and I want to be aggressive. And he did all three things. He took it and ran with it. The command that he had with our staff, with our players, was outstanding.
Where we are in the standings, what our rankings are, none of that matters in January. I mean, it's nice that we are ranked. It's nice that our guys are getting a little more publicity and recognized for their hard work. But we just know this is a very difficult game against a very talented Louisville team that we know we have to play extremely well to win.
What I remember from Vanderbilt last year was definitely that they can make shots. They can you can have a lead that you think is comfortable by 8-10 points, and then they just come over, hit a few threes, make a run, and suddenly it's a one-possession game.
A pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic here with you. Phil Kornbluth in transit, trying to get himself down here to our downtown studios in Columbia, where we have an unprecedented run of bad late Friday night traffic. So he's making his way in. Professor Tom Hayes is off tonight, but we will take you through the evening, and we have a lot for a Friday here, a lot for a football Friday too, as we heard the news earlier today from Will Muschamp that he has hired a new offensive coordinator, or at least promoted from within a new offensive coordinator in Brian McClendon, and also added a quarterbacks coach in Dan Werner, the offensive analyst at Alabama. And he is still yet to add a 10th assistant, which the NCAA mandates that after January 8th, you can have that particular position in place, and he still needs to put somebody together there. Clemson added an assistant today as well, promoting from within with Lemansky Hall. He'll be the defensive ends coach there, and also all the basketball stuff to come this weekend. USC hosting Vanderbilt. Clemson playing its first home game since becoming ranked. They will face Louisville. 1-800-956-7266. Your immediate reaction to the promotion of Brian McClendon from within, and also the addition of Dan Werner. I have to tell you, the addition of Werner was more exciting to me than McClendon's promotion, and the reason of that is this. I'm not the kind of guy who needs to be wowed by a name. We just found out news earlier today, literally within the last couple of minutes, that Missouri has made a hire for its vacant offensive coordinator position, and they hired the former Tennessee coach Derek Dooley. That's a name. I didn't necessarily need a name for South Carolina's offensive coordinator position, but I needed to know that there was going to be a departure from what we'd seen over the course of the last 2 years with the South Carolina offense. And I don't know if we get that from Brian McClendon. Now, you can say all you want about, well, he brings a fresh voice. Maybe there was some sort of consternation between Roper and Muschamp. We've talked about what happened at the Florida game, where Roper basically said the word BS, and not just BS. He said the whole word out there during a big argument that took place in that game over the headsets with either Will Muschamp or somebody down on the field. But when we're looking at this offense from a personnel standpoint, and from just a philosophical standpoint, I don't know if I saw enough in the Michigan contest to make me think that Brian McClendon has a handle on what this offense can do and what it can do at its top end. I know that it's a very short amount of time that you can implement things from the end of the season and when he got the job to when he was able to be on the field and obviously coach his first game. I don't know if necessarily even somebody without play calling experience from the outside would have been a better hire, but this is a calculated risk. No matter what Will Muschamp tells you about whether or not he thinks this is a gamble or not, it is a gamble. It has to be a gamble for you if you're thinking it from the standpoint of Will Muschamp, who has really never gotten this position on his football team right. He has never gotten this fully and completely. I just think that if you look at from South Carolina's perspective, you need to get more out of your wide receivers. You need to get more out of Jake Bentley. And you need to get more out of this running game. And a lot of that comes back to recruiting offensive linemen. A lot of that comes back to making sure that the play calling scheme, whether it's up-tempo, whether it's horizontal stuff, whether it's taking more shots down the field, All that needs to be put into place. And then I always saw glimpses of that, especially in the second half. The deep ball to Shi Smith was a very big key for South Carolina. And I understand that they can't necessarily do a whole bunch leading up to it. But in my mind, I don't want to say it's an uninspiring hire, but it's not one where I'm going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to get the pom-poms out for Brian McClendon and automatically be, in his backyard and supporting him. This is one that I look to and I say proceed with caution. What do you think? 800-956-7266 on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Email talkback at SportsTalkSC.com. And, of course, a lot of the reaction early on was from people who said, well, we need Brian McClendon's recruiting experience and all he did at Georgia, what he was able to do in the stand hold there. I get that. I get that recruiting should be the number one thing. And at the foremost bedrock of your program, you need players. And you need somebody to help you go get players. But if you're an offensive coordinator or an offensive mind or somebody in this industry who can bring bodies in here, you were able to recruit. Like, that's the thing. Like, I think that you were always going to bring in somebody who could recruit. Now, whether or not you brought in somebody who has the existing relationships that you have with the guys you're targeting right now is one thing. But if you brought in an inspiring enough hire, you could basically use those use that cachet to flip those guys. And I shudder to think that this move was made more. And again, Will Muschamp denied this flatly, and I think he did it so expertly. But I think this move was made more to appease folks who wanted McClendon still to be on staff. He's a popular guy with the players, but there's a reason why the players don't run the ship. This is a reason why adults run the ship. I think that if you're looking at the broad scope of things and the broad depth of what is best for South Carolina's athletic program, they needed, from an optics standpoint, a fresh voice. Because here's the thing. If South Carolina continues to be offensively challenged going forward, and you don't necessarily get the kind of changes out of Brian McClendon that you're looking for, guess what happens? Will Muschamp's not making the next offensive coordinator hire. So in my mind, he has attached every bit of his future to Brian McClendon. If that's the guy you want to have make you tone forward and basically suture your job security to that guy, then that's your prerogative, Will Muschamp. I understand that. I understand that there's a desire for folks to want to wait and see and all that stuff. And again, I'm all for you there. I'm all for you there. But pardon me if I'm not just a little bit cautious going forward here. And in my mind, there's just not enough in the pedigree of McClendon to sit here and say this is an automatic slam dunk hire. It's one thing to promote a guy from within when somebody successful leaves. You very rarely see somebody promoted from within after you had to fire somebody. Like that to me is just not something that is done in this industry. And in my mind, South Carolina needed to serve its fans, its boosters, the people who sign and write Will Muschamp's checks. They needed to serve those people a lot better by putting somebody in here who brings in a fresh voice. 800-956-7266. We'll continue to talk about that. Lemansky Hall, again, as we said, is the new Clemson defensive ends coach. He will join the Dabo Swinney staff. He was a player with Swinney at Alabama. He was a teammate of his and also played in the National Football League as a linebacker, so he brings that kind of outside linebacker perspective into the defensive end room. And also Joe Moglia, a very familiar face and a familiar person as part of our purview here in our listening area. The Coastal Carolina coach has announced today that he is returning to his post as head coach after a medical leave of absence. He will join us on Sports Talk today a little bit after 7. We're going to hear from Brad Brownell on the number 25 Clemson Tigers as they get ready to take on Louisville. And also we'll hear from Justin Minaya and Mike Kotsar from the Gamecock basketball team as South Carolina looks to try and win its first conference game as they are home to Vanderbilt at Colonial Life Arena on Saturday evening. We'll take your phone calls on the offensive coordinator position and the additions not only of Brian McClendon to the uprooting of the offensive coordinator position. Also, Dan Werner is in the quarterback position as well. Also, we'll continue to talk about what's going on in the offseason and also whether or not Clemson can withstand whatever defections it might have to the NFL draft. We still have not heard anybody yet from Clemson decide that they were going to take their talents to the pros yet, and we'll talk about that as we continue. Phil joins me on the other side. We return on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
I don't know why people chose Friday afternoon to drive into Columbia all at the same time on Bull Street. I think you were right talking to me off the air. There must have been a wreck or something. I-20 was an absolute parking lot. And I guess
there was a car fire on 20.
Everybody was bleeding over to Bull Street this afternoon, and nobody, knowing who I was, would get out of my way.
You mean you don't get a police escort when you walk in here like I do?
Well, I mean, I was flashing my lights. I was yelling at people. I was giving them the bull rush, and nobody responded. Anyway, good to be with you. Thanks for opening up. I'll just give you my 2 cents on the hire today at USC. Then we'll get to your phone calls, 800-956-7266. You know, my initial thought is on the surface, this is a questionable hire by Will Muschamp because, as everybody knows, offense has been his issue. I really thought he would go out and hire himself an established offensive mind, a young guy who's already done it at a high level, maybe at the next level of schools, but somebody who's had an offense that has produced 470 yards a game, 35 points per game. That's what I thought he would do. He chose not to do that. He chose to promote from within, then hire his quarterbacks coach from outside, which I also thought was questionable. Not saying that Dan Werner is not a quarterback guru and doesn't have a great offensive mind and all that. Let me say this up front. I mean, history will tell us if this was a good move or not.
True.
We'll know in a season or two just how good this was.
We'll know after good move.
But you know, Bobby Bentley's a quarterback guru too.
Right.
And but anyway,
maybe they wanted continuity with the running back position. I don't know.
Well, anyway, you know, look, one thing I will say this from the 2 years covering Muschamp, I think he's a very smart guy, and I think he knows what he is doing with his program. Now you could say, well, he hired Kurt Roper, and that didn't go well, and this is true. I mean, sometimes you think you make a good hire, it doesn't work out. I think he believes that McClendon is a good, young, and up-and-coming coach with a bright future. And in keeping him on the staff, you also maintain strong recruiting ties, even though he went out of his way, Muschamp went out of his way to say two things. Number one, the recruiting side of it and all that did not play a factor. And number two, the thought of losing McClendon to somebody else, and this was a way to stave that off, was not a factor.
That's a lie.
What he was saying was, he believes of the people he talked to, and he said he talked to many, without giving a number, this is the best hire for him at South Carolina.
Now,
along with the other addition on the offensive side.
But here's the problem. I mean, this gives me the air that he went out and saw what was out there and who was willing to come here, and he couldn't find anybody better, and that's uninspiring to me.
Time will tell. Again, I'm not going to stamp this a success or a failure until we see what happens. I think McClendon is a good offensive mind from the standpoint of what he's done with his receivers, and from being the co-offensive coordinator, whatever input he had to Kurt Roper. I mean, Kurt Roper, I guess, had the final say. Now McClendon will have the final say. He'll also have an experienced guy to bounce things off of in Werner, who was offensive coordinator at Ole Miss and ran very prolific offenses there and has a history of developing quarterbacks at a high level.
At Miami, yeah.
And at Ole Miss.
Here's the other part of it, though, too. And I'm not sitting here and saying you got to go out and do what Missouri did and just get a name, because they got a name that doesn't have necessarily a good track record at the college level.
What's that name?
The Derek Dooley name. He ended up obviously becoming the Missouri offensive coordinator. We talked about it in the opening segment. But in my mind, his offensive numbers at Tennessee were not exactly inspiring. So I'm not just saying you have to go out and get a name, but I would have liked someone with a pedigree, somebody who had at least some sort of
a history.
Yeah,
a history. So now at Mizzou, now your favorite cheer is M-I-Z.
No.
Just play along. M-I-Z.
Z-O-U.
Right. Now you can go D-O-O
L-E-Y?
Yeah.
Oh, that's stupid.
You like that?
All
right, let's take your phone calls, hear what you have to say. We've got a full lineup for you, as Will no doubt has laid out for you. Great to have Joe Moglia back on the sideline. Looking forward to having the coach with us after the top of the hour. Stay tuned for that. Hank in Columbia, welcome into Sports Talk. I know you're going to tell us we're full of it. We're totally off base. We don't know what we're talking about. Did I save you some breath there?
No, I'm gonna tell you. You don't know what you're talking about. Everybody has their opinion. My my opinion is a little bit different from yours because, as I told you earlier, so many people when you hired Brent Peace and Roper down in Florida, both of those guys were pedigree guys. Duke was cutting it up, getting the bowl games, all that, and it just didn't work. And I've always felt, and I remember having a conversation one time with Ellis Johnson, which is you have to have familiarity with the SEC to know the SEC. So that's one thing. But my other thing is this, though. I was just listening to Will at the beginning, and taking off your intro, Will, you would have been one of the many fans, including Carolina fans, and a large part of Clemson fans, who, when Dabo was promoted, it's kind of like McClendon. Everybody thought this was a good, great young coach.
Yeah.
Just like when Skip Holtz kept on trying to convince Lou to hire Urban Meyer, and you just don't know. The one thing I will say, putting in with Warner, is Warner had Chad Kelly, Bo
Wallace, yeah.
Bo Wallace at
Ole Miss.
But when he had working with Dorsey and Toretta, those were drop back guys. So in those four guys, you got your Bentley Scott type quarterback and your Jordan type quarterback. But also you had I heard a lot in that press conference, the undertone of, since it was all Ropers, that there wasn't a lot of taking of advice from everybody in the table. And I know that once the guys, Elliott and Scott, those took over at Clemson, collectively they put together their game plan.
Yeah, but
it seemed like Muschamp liked the offense, but he wanted to get to a point where they would try some things and be aggressive.
Here's the problem, Hank. Making the Jeff Scott, Tony Elliott comparison here, you're promoting from within from what was a successful offense. Like, that was a successful offense. Chad Morris left to go be a head coach because he had a successful offense. You're promoting from within from an offense that ranked 100th in the country. Okay? The optics of that are not good. Now, what this tells me is that Will Muschamp had a philosophical disconnect with Kurt Roper. That's what that tells me. This has nothing to do with where he felt philosophically with the offense. He had a philosophical disconnect with Kurt Roper. That's what that tells me. And I don't think that necessarily means that the philosophical differences that they had are going to be any different than what we see out in the field. That's what I think.
Thanks for your phone call. Let's continue on the lines on this Friday. Butch in Clover, welcome into Sports Talk. Good evening.
Hello, enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I got a comment. I'm a Will Muschamp fan, but I got 48 years experience coming to Gamecock football. I think he's made a mistake. We have as good a receivers as anybody in the country. He won't win 9 ball games next year.
He won't win 9 ball games next year.
I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. Again, thanks for your call. It's a roll of the dice. Sometimes it comes up 7. Sometimes it comes up snake eyes. I think we're just going to have to wait and see. I think you're spot on with what you're saying. The optics don't look great promoting from within from an offense that averaged, averaged 21 points, 22. What do they average this year? 22 points a game?
Something like that.
Not a whole lot. A defense that saved them really in the bowl game. One thing that impressed Muschamp, he said it after the bowl game and he said it today, were the adjustments that McClendon made at halftime of the bowl game because they were getting stuffed. And he said they were getting stuffed, so they changed their blocking assignments and their protection plans and all that, and it paid off for them in the second half. That's great, but what identification is he going to have for the offense? That's the thing that people who have been on our show, the football experts, the people we trust, from Corey Miller to Steve Tannehill to Chuck Reedy, who know the game, they say, what are they trying to be on offense? What will McClendon try and be on offense? Does anybody know?
Don't know.
That's the big question. Friday edition of Sports Talk. Gosh, it's good to have the weekend here for some big basketball. Clemson and Louisville. Tigers trying to get 3-0 in ACC play. USC and Vanderbilt. Gamecocks trying to avoid getting to 0-3 in SEC play. We'll hear from both sides. Joe Moglia coming up after the top of the hour. Stay tuned for that. First time coach on the air with us since he stepped aside back in the summer to deal with health issues. Glad to hear that he is good to go, 100%, and taking over all his duties there at Coastal Carolina. He was certainly missed on the sideline. See if he can get the Chanticleers back up and running at full speed going into 2018. But today, here in Columbia, first of all, Will Muschamp had his press conference to talk about staff changes. Also, he said a couple of other things. He's not expecting any other staff moves at this particular time. I still hear some rumblings about Lance Thompson and LSU, but we'll wait and see if anything comes to pass on that. We do have the coaches' convention in Charlotte coming up starting this weekend and going into next week. So that's when a lot of things can and do happen. He also said Deebo Samuel and Bryson Allen Williams will miss spring ball.
No, he said Deebo will play.
I'm sorry, not Deebo. Jamias Williams and Bryson Allen Williams. Deebo will play.
Yes,
in the spring.
And Donnell Stanley is a go, and the other one that was was Mon Denson.
Yes. Yeah, Mon Denson and Donnell Stanley both had some surgery to clean up some things and should be okay. And I think that was it from a news standpoint. His biggest news, of course, was the announcement that Brian McClendon, who'd been the co-offensive coordinator and receivers coach, will now be the singular OC.
Got two announcements today. Obviously, promoting Brian McClendon to our offensive coordinator. He'll continue to coach receivers. In his 2 years here at South Carolina, he's been outstanding. You see all the rapport that he has with our staff, with our players, how he positively affects everybody in our organization. Very easy to see that when I want to go a different direction for the bowl game. And talking to Brian, I said, listen, I just want to be balanced. I want to dictate the tempo of the game, and I want to be aggressive. And he did all three things. He took it and ran with it. The command that he had with our staff, with our players, was outstanding. The leadership ability that he has as a coordinator and a future head coach is obvious to me. There's a reason why at Georgia you name him intern coach in the bowl game and they win the bowl game, because the kids believe in his leadership abilities and the example he sets for young people. And I'm excited about it. I thought the biggest question obviously is game day. Guys never called a game. So how's that going to go against the best defense we played this year? And I thought it went very well. I thought our plan was good. Obviously, in the first part of the game, we had a hard time blocking them. I mean, just call it like it is. In protection in the run game, the adjustments made at halftime to change protections, which we did, more 7-man protection to get the ball vertically down the field, more quick game, and to stay with the tempo, which was affecting them defensively. And, again, calm, cool, and collected throughout the entire time. I was extremely impressed with how he managed the situation and how we were able to adjust. I know that in his first game calling the game, he did a lot better than a lot of proven coordinators. I can tell you that. So I'm excited about that and excited about our room. I got great belief in Brian and our entire offensive staff. Bobby will go back to coaching running backs and did a fantastic job in the bowl game with Jake. And again, Jake played at a high level, and Bobby's more than qualified to be a quarterback coach at South Carolina and a coordinator. I mean, the guy's an outstanding coach. Eric Wolf, Washington, those guys have done a fantastic job for us. I'm going to name Dan Warner as our quarterbacks coach through this process. I talked to a lot of people, interviewed Dan one-on-one, and then I brought him to Columbia for a day of bowl practice, and he and Brian hit it off, and I saw that this was going to be able to work. Dan's got a wealth of experience and knowledge as a play caller, as a developer of quarterbacks. I called Nick. He's presently at Alabama in an off-the-field role, and I called Nick, and nobody I've got more respect for in his opinion and how much Dan has helped their offense this year with some schematically some things that are very similar to what we do, which excited me. In 2015, I was the defensive coordinator at Auburn. We played Ole Miss. Dan was the coordinator and play caller, and they had 558 yards. That doesn't happen to us very often. But they were creative. They played with a lot of tempo. They were aggressive. They had good players, but they were coached extremely well. And I was more than impressed with Dan. And as a coach, you always kind of have a short list of guys that impressed you. And he certainly that day did. Then you go back and look at the research and the development at the quarterback position of Bo Wallace and Chad Kelly, and set numerous records at Ole Miss, which has had some great quarterback play. You go back to Miami, he was a part of 3 national championships, coached a Heisman Trophy winner in Gino Torretta, and also a Maxwell Award winner in Ken Dorsey. So his track record speaks for itself, his experience. I'm really excited about this combination. As a coordinator, when I was a coordinator for a lot of years at a high level, I always had sounding boards in the room, because the game plan process is how you're going to attack an offense or a defense. The situational football that always comes up are discussed through that week for game day. And there's no question that Dan's going to be an outstanding Brian. in that room, along with another outstanding offensive staff that we have here at South Carolina.
Okay, Will Muschamp, his announcement about the hiring of Brian McClendon as his full-time offensive coordinator. What did McClendon think of the opportunity being given to him by Muschamp? Here is some of what he had to say.
One, I think is all just a buy-in to everything that we have going on here at South Carolina as a team. One of the biggest things that Coach Muschamp always talks about is, effort, toughness, and discipline. I think on offense, we want to lead the country in effort and toughness and discipline. And this is and I think it all goes throughout the whole team aspect. But Coach said it best. It's not like we're gonna reinvent the wheel offensively or anything like that. One thing that we do have to do is do a great job of giving our players the best chance to be successful. And I think that's kind of all any coach can be asked to do. Coach mentioned it in the bowl game, man. We were kind of having some problems and everything else doing, protecting them or even blocking them, just flat out blocking them. And so we had to change some things in order to help those guys get in front of them a little bit better. So if that means adding an extra guy in on protection or things like that, then that's what we got to do. So, but that's what we're constantly going to be trying to do is, give our guys, get creative and giving our guys ways to succeed.
Ryan, there were some reports out there that said, you had some options to leave.
Sure.
Why ultimately did you stay at South Carolina, and when did you find out that you were the offensive coordinator?
Well, Coach and I, we had a conversation actually right after the game. But the plan was, I tell people this all the time. When we moved here from the University of Georgia, moving sucks. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's hard on the family. You're away from your family at a certain point in time. So we wanted to choose a place when we left that we felt like we could be there for a while. Okay. And that's the reason why we're here. We didn't come here to try to bounce around to try to do a bunch of different things. We believe in South Carolina. That's why we're here. That's why we came here in the first place. So to know that I can, to know that Coach has to trust in me to kind of move up the ladder and promote me to OC. It's invaluable. You know what I mean? It really is, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to the family. But ultimately, we got to do what's best for South Carolina, and that's why we're here, and that's what we're here to do.
Brian, obviously, without going into specifics, do you like the structure of this offense, or are there bigger concept-wise changes that you kind of like to implement?
Sure, I think Coach mentioned it. There might be one or two things that that you'll see that'll be noticeably different. I do think every coach right now is kind of going through the same thing. Because you're getting a brand new team, you got guys leaving, you got new guys coming in, so. The biggest challenge is just trying to figure out, where all the pieces fit right now. Like you said, man, we're going to have some shuffling to make sure we're getting our best 5 offensive linemen out there on the field. We don't know who that's going to be yet. So everybody's kind of falling in line there. And so, to answer your question, I think, the only thing that we can do and that I can promise you is that we're going to play to our strengths, and that's kind of, and what those will be.
All right, Brian McClendon, USC's new offensive coordinator, receivers coach, and good luck to him and good luck to Dan Werner, and see if they can elevate this offense to championship level. If they can get the offense elevated to championship level to match what should be a really good defense next year and an improved kicking game, I think they'll have something.
I don't want to be Mr. Negative here, but it's not inspiring.
Mr. Negative, MIZDOO. That's why you're in such a bad mood.
I'm not
the Dooley hire.
I'm not in a bad mood.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a chilly Friday night here in the Palmetto State.
Some places chillier than others.
Hope the folks down in the Charleston area and all on the coast and inland toward Columbia where you got ice and snow. Hope you're doing well. Hope you'll hang in there. It's going to be passing here before too long. We got nothing that I've seen. We got nothing. No, I did hear there could be some freezing rain in the upstate over the weekend.
Oh, thanks. As I'm going up there. That's nice.
Yeah, well, I said like Sunday night.
Okay.
According to our newscast that I heard Sunday night. Hey, check out foundersfcu.com. Learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. A little more from Will Muschamp. Then we'll have some recruiting for you. Will Muschamp from his press conference today talking about the process of leading to the hiring of McClendon as the full-time OC. Also, his thoughts on Bobby Bentley going back to running backs, and also the just the impact of these changes on the staff in general. Here's more from Muschamp.
That was the biggest question mark I had. Obviously, all the other qualities I was looking for were there, and you see the adjustments and the things that he did on game day were really good. Made my comfort level obviously go much higher. So I don't have any. I don't see this as a gamble at all. I see this as a very sure, good decision for our program.
Well, however you want to define this term, how many people did you interview for this job?
Numerous.
Numerous is more than 5, more than 10?
Probably not 10.
Between 5 and 10. And how much, if any, was a
Why is that so important?
I don't know. It's just interesting.
You're interesting.
That's very kind of you to say.
I could say some other things. But I don't want to
that would be less kind, I assume. Was keeping Brian on staff a factor in your decision?
No.
Okay.
No. Hiring the best fit and the best coach for the position was the most important thing. And whether that was going to be Brian or whoever it was, that was the most important thing.
You just kind of touched on it, but Will, how important was it to keep him on for recruiting purposes? And do you know where Dan will recruit right now?
No, the most important thing was hiring the best offensive coordinator for the University of South Carolina. So let's make that extremely clear. And we have not really talked in terms of obviously adding another coach to the staff of what recruiting areas we will. I've got some ideas, but I'd rather get those in cement before we talk about them. So, having another coach and where will their value be in the recruiting, areas and different things. So we'll go through that.
Will, what was the thinking about moving Bobby back to running backs coach and going outside to bring in a quarterbacks coach?
Well, I think that the wealth of knowledge that Dan has had in our league at a very high level as a quarterback developer and play caller was really important. To me, Phil, it's all about fit. How do things fit? How do they work together? And you look at our defensive staff. You got T-Rob's a defensive back guy. Lance has been with us. He understands how we play up front. Mike Peterson's been with us. He understands how we're going to play and how we're going to coach things up front. Coleman Hutzler understands at linebacker how we want things taught and coached and teached. And so, to me, it's all about fit. And I felt like that Dan was the best fit for us. Certainly, Bobby's more than qualified.
Well, how much does Brian's role in recruiting shift or change, if at all, in terms of
It really doesn't. As a coordinator, obviously during the season, at times position coaches may go out on a Friday night, and I go out on Friday nights to recruit. I don't want the coordinators going out because we have meetings and walkthroughs and such with our team. So generally, my rule of thumb is the special teams coordinator, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and both line coaches don't go out on Friday night. Other than that, it just doesn't change anything. You'll be on the road as much as anyone else, as much as myself or anybody else on our staff.
What did Josh Kendall at the state do to get in Will Muschamp's cornflakes, man? He's replaced you as most contentious inside.
It's a badge of honor, man, when a coach has commentary for you like that. That's a badge of honor. Wear it with pride. All right, there you go. And listen, listening to Muschamp's reasoning and all, it sounds very sensible to me. So again, I think Muschamp is a very smart guy. I think he is very focused on what needs to be done to make South Carolina a better football program. He talked about recruiting once again, and somebody asked him a question about something on a certain day, and he said, "No, we'll be out recruiting on that particular day." And I think it was when the team reports they're going to have a team meeting, and he said, "We'll be out recruiting, but the strength coach and the academic advisor will run the team meeting.
15th,
they'll
January.
be out recruiting." Yeah, so. I mean, he understands that. He gets it. The thing I like about Muschamp, too, again, just like he does in recruiting, when he talked about McClendon, he talked about Werner, he didn't need any notes.
No.
He knew, of course, he knows McClendon. He knew everything about Werner in his head. And so it wasn't like this is somebody had to write up a bio on the guy for him. He knows his people. He knows his players. I think the relationship is very, very good. So, we'll just see what happens. And for South Carolina's standpoint, you hope that this works. For Brian McClendon's standpoint, you hope that this works because this is the next step towards becoming a head coach somewhere. You become a successful OC. You run an offense that averages 35 points per game, 450-plus yards per game, is exciting, plays at a fast pace, has people standing up and on the edge of their seats for you. You can take that next step to become a head coach.
Proof 3 things to me today. Loyal to his guys, doesn't care about the optics, and he's sutured his future to that man.
Well, to a certain degree. I mean, if
it doesn't work.
Look, they won 9 games.
If it doesn't work.
They've won 15 games in 2 years with a crappy offense.
Yeah.
All right. And like I said, he started out inheriting a 3-win team. He got to 6. He got to 9.
Yeah.
Will they improve enough to get beyond 9 in 2018?
Here's the thing. You can't win 10 games with a crappy offense. You can't win 12 games with a crappy offense.
Mm-hmm.
You probably can get to 9, depending on the way the schedule breaks. If you can't get beyond that, and the offense can't get beyond that, I don't see him hiring another coordinator. You won't be able to because he will be out of a job.
All right, let me give recruiting a run here in the final minutes of this hour on this Friday night of Sports Talk. Checked in with receiver Jacoby Pinckney, 6'3", 200 of Dorman. One of the top players in the state for 2019. He had 65 catches, 1,075 yards, 7 touchdowns last season. He tells us right now he looks like he's headed out of state. USC was one of his first offers, but he said the Gamecocks are showing no interest, so they're kind of off his radar. Clemson has an offer. If they did offer, that would change some things. But right now, Virginia Tech, Ole Miss, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Indiana are the ones that he is most interested in. Clemson offered 2019. Got a little saliva in the
Is that what it was?
in the throat area there, go post-nasal drip.
Is that
Sorry. Clemson offered 2019 quarterback Sam Howell of Monroe, North Carolina. He also has a USC offer, Tennessee, Kentucky, NC State, Maryland, Pitt, Wake, and Maryland. Again, Maryland likes him so much, they offered twice, at least on my sheet. USC offered 2019 defensive end Tremont Morris Brash of Washington. Boston College, North Carolina, Maryland, Pitt, Rutgers, and Syracuse also offered. Clemson in the top 5 with 2019 defensive end DeMarvin Leal of Converse, Texas. Others are Texas A&M, Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma State. Defensive end Dennis Briggs of Kissimmee, Florida, told 24/7 Sports he'll visit Louisville next weekend. USC, January 19th. Florida State, January 26th. He'll also visit Miami. Lower Richland defensive end Antonio Anderson has a top 3 of Limestone, Charleston Southern, and South Carolina State. And there was one other note, kind of a minor note, but it's worth mentioning if I can find it here. USC offered a preferred walk-on opportunity to a lineman from Marlboro County. And it's not coming up on my list here.
You have a name?
I have a name. My name is Phil.
You have 30 seconds.
His name is not coming up
20 seconds
at this particular time.
10 seconds.
In my memory bank. So I tell you what.
5 seconds.
I'll research it and bring it back to
4,
you after
3,
the break.
2, 1.
Along with Joe Moglia.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, we're back. It is Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, and the player who I was trying to remember is Noah Henderson from Marlboro County, offered a preferred walk-on spot at the USC, offensive lineman and defensive lineman Noah Henderson from Marlboro County.
Glad we cleared that up.
Yes, it was something I wanted to get out there. All right, a day full of good news, USC coaching news, Clemson coaching news. The best news, however, no question about it, comes from Coastal Carolina, as the word came out today that Coach Joe Moglia has gotten the green light from the doctors to return full-time to his duties, which are many at Coastal Carolina, first and foremost as the head football coach. We welcome him back to Sports Talk. And, man, it's great to hear that you are good and ready to go.
Hello, Phil. Hi, guys. No, I'm really very excited about that, Phil. Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Good. Good. I mean, I'm in good shape. And the whole issue a year ago was I had an infection in my lung. And the problem with that is I hadn't taken care of that for about 2 years. Then we found out that I had an allergy growing. I had mold growing there. So we've taken care of all that. So I feel good about that. I feel strong. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic. I'm ready to go.
Are you different body-wise? I mean, did you have to do anything physically to help fight off what you were going through?
Well, I think exercise is always a good thing. And sometimes, while that's a very, very important part of my life, I'm not always as disciplined as I should be to do what I need to do with regards to eating and working out. I have done a good job over the span of the last 6 months or so. So I've been eating healthier. I've been working out. So I'm in good shape. I am ready to kick ass. I could go in a heavyweight fight now, I think.
You sound energized, Coach, and I'm sure you're obviously been keeping close eye on the program. I know that probably wasn't the record number-wise that you wanted, but they finished strong. What did you think of the job that Jamie Chadwell did in your stead, and just from the team standpoint as you continue to at least monitor this transition into the Division I level, or at least the FBS level into the Sun Belt Conference?
I was certainly happy with the job that Jamie did. Keep in mind, guys, that I shared this with him. I mean, all of this took place a few days prior to the actual first practice. So he had to take on an awful lot of new responsibility that he wasn't planning on, and he'd only been with us for 6 months. I think as far as the team goes, I'm very pleased with the improvement we made over the span of the season and the way we finished up. But I know my players and I know the staff, probably are all very much in sync in terms of we did a lot of things last year that normally we don't do. Like, for example, we are very disciplined. We're normally one of the best teams in the country in terms of fewest penalties. This year was the opposite of that. Our special teams have probably won us 10 games in the previous 3 years. Last year, they probably lost us 3 games. We made repeat mistakes, and that's one of the things normally we don't do. Now, again, I'm delighted that we did a good job finishing up the season, and certainly we're going to begin spring ball with a real focus on making sure we correct the things that we were doing wrong.
Talking with Joe Moglia, head football coach at the Coastal Carolina, back on the job full-time. Now, I imagine one of the first things you've got to do is figure out your quarterback situation. You have been through a run. You had such a great quarterback who led you there for, I think it was 3 tremendous years. Had a couple of years here where it's been a little rocky for you at the position. You got to kind of get that sorted out, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And we have Kilton Anderson was our starter at the end of the season, so he's back, so that's good. We're bringing in Bryce Carpenter, who's coming in from Venice, Florida. In fact, he was the recipient of the Mr. Football Award in Florida, which is something that he and everybody else is pretty excited about. And then we have a handful of other guys that should be able to compete and be effective for that job. We'll have a redshirt freshman by the name of Darius Harper. And there'll be a handful of others, but I think we'll be in better shape going forward than where we have been up until now.
Do you think, the preseason prediction for you guys in your first year in the Sun Belt was not good? I mean, folks had you down at the very bottom, and I laughed at that. I said, no way. I said, Coastal's going to win some games in that league and maybe finish in the upper half. Didn't happen. They were right. I was wrong. Do you think that it was maybe a little more difficult? The league was a little tougher than most people expected, or at least people like me expected?
No, I don't think so. I think we should have done better. And as I said, what I was disappointed with was, I mean, for example, penalties, not being effective in the kicking game. Penalties has nothing to do with what kind of opponent you have. Now, the level of talent we were playing against was absolutely better than what we played against in the past. But we knew that. There weren't any surprises as far as that goes. Certainly, there were some teams that were definitely better than us. But at the end of the day, I think you're aware, Phil, of the philosophy of band. You stand on your own 2 feet, you take responsibility for yourself. So we've got to be able to take responsibility that there were so many things that we did not do well that they're the reasons why we didn't have the season that perhaps we could have had.
What's the biggest barrier, at least to recruiting on the kind of level, and how do you get into the rooms of those guys who will get you to be able to play at that level that you guys are at, transitioning into the FBS level and into the Sun Belt?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, I mean, we've got a great tradition. We're 51-15 the previous 5 years. We're very proud of the success we've had. We have sent guys to the pros, and we feel good about all those things. I think, and unlike a lot of FCS schools, they apply to get into a particular league. We were invited to get to the Sun Belt, so we're confident. I think the Sun Belt is confident that we're going to be able to compete there, and it's just the beginning. So for guys that are now coming in as part of the program, they'll be the beginning of this. And the other piece of that, though, guys, it really hasn't got anything to do with football. There are two things. Again, Phil, I think you're aware of these things. There are two things we do that no one in the nation does. The first thing is we don't have any rules. We have a philosophy that we call be a man. That's not some tough guy. That's a real man, stands on his own 2 feet, takes responsibility for himself, treats others with dignity and respect, and lives with the consequences of his actions. That's the foundation upon which we build our program. So when I'm talking to recruits or their parents, I tell them point blank, if you don't get goosebumps from this is not the right place for you to go. And the second thing we do that no one else does, we give up. I'm going to repeat that. We give up 30 minutes of practice every week to have a session that we call Life After Football. And we go over things that are relevant and important in terms of what's going on in the world that has nothing to do with football. For example, last year, in 120 years of college football, the only football program whose entire team on election day was Coastal Carolina. That's in 120 years. So I think we bring something to the table that I think when kids really look at what they're doing in the future, that differentiates us from others.
Well, if people can't learn from you about how to make it in the world, then they're not listening to the right people. Now, your first game back on the sideline will be right down the road from us here in Columbia over at Williams-Brice, opening up against the Gamecocks. So how do you feel about that? Last time you were in Columbia, things didn't go well. They're coming off a bowl win, 9-win season, kind of feeling pretty good about things. I know it's a long way down the road, but I imagine that's going to give you guys something to really be excited about over the spring and summer as you get ready for 2018.
No, I would agree with that. I think Muschamp and his staff have really done a very good job there. I think you remember when we struggled when we played them the first time, we had a great season. We finished the season. We were going to the playoffs the next week. So if we weren't in a game, but we had pretty much everybody out in the second quarter. That was also the best team they've ever had. That was Clowney and a whole lot of other guys. So I wouldn't kind of look at that too much, at least from our perspective. But going forward, I mean, I'm sure all of our guys watched South Carolina play Michigan. I thought Michigan was a solid team, especially on defense. They beat them. And we certainly know what kind of program they have, and we certainly know what kind of challenge we are up for. But we're not going to begin talking about South Carolina. We're going to begin talking about what do we need to do to improve over 2017. And that'll be the focus. And we'll start to worry about South Carolina, frankly, probably by the middle of August.
All right. Can we hold you for just a couple more minutes? You got a few more minutes you can spend with us?
Yeah, I'm good, guys. Yeah.
Great. We'll put you on hold here and come back for a couple more minutes with Joe Moglia, head football coach at Coastal, announcing today that his doctors have said go for it. He's good to go as the Chanticleer's head football coach in all activities once again. Back with him for a couple more minutes in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut, along with Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes having the night off. Brian Leonard is here as well. Couple more minutes with Coach Joe Moglia from Coastal.
I love this guy. I think he's my new favorite person in the state.
Coach Moglia?
Because he talks like me.
To know him is to love him.
He talks like me. He's from the north.
Will's a Yankee, just like you.
Are you telling me you're from New York?
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on Long Island.
Of course.
Okay, so the people from my neighborhood on Dyton Street used to go to Long Island on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Funny.
And now you can.
My dad's from Queens.
Why don't you just buy the island and call it Moglia Island?
It's a Long Island.
Because it's too expensive. I've looked into that. I would have to buy like a little piece of the island, and I didn't think that was worth it.
I don't think you understand, Phil, how long Long Island is.
Is that right?
It's very long.
I've flown over it before going into LaGuardia. Anyway, back to more pertinent things. Thank you for hanging on with us for a couple of more minutes. Just wanted to ask you about your staff. Everything status quo now? Or are you having any well, I guess you replaced your defensive coordinator. Fill us in on what's happened with your staff.
Well, the only real change as far as the coaching staff goes is that we brought in Marvin Sanders for that job.
Yeah,
and Marvin at one time was the defensive coordinator of North Carolina. He's been a secondary coach at Nebraska. He's a secondary coach. By the way, when I was at Nebraska, the 2 years I was at Nebraska, Marvin was there as a secondary coach. And then when I took over the Omaha Nighthawks in the UFL, we hired him as our secondary coach. And then from there, he wound up going to Florida Atlantic. The guys got fired at Florida Atlantic. Then he was going out to USC with Kiffin, Southern Cal, that is. And then they got fired from there. Now his son was in high school and he had moved a lot, and he wound up coaching high school, so he had a chance to actually see his son play. So I have tremendous respect for Marvin. I learned a lot from him when I was at Nebraska, and I know that he cares and relates well with the kids. And I think our guys are going to respond to him really well.
Well, what will be different when you walk in the door and address the team, or if you have addressed the team already? What will be different once you step back in the door and get your hands back on this program?
I think the first time I'm going to talk to the team is going to be on Thursday. And I think, really, guys, I'm going to go back. I don't want to spend, I'm going to tell the guys, I don't want to spend a lot of time in 2017, but it's necessary. It's necessary to understand, kind of prioritize our mistakes, our problems in 2017. Prioritize those. Which are the ones that really hurt us the most? And then spend time understanding, and we do this with the coaches, understanding why we had those problems. Because if you don't understand why, you can't fix them. So understand why we had those problems, and then totally, truly commit to fixing those. And that's the way we're going to begin. Now, right now, the focus is going to be on recruiting. For the players, it's going to be, now's a great opportunity. You've got to get off to a good start as far as your classes go. And the strength and conditioning and rehab piece for the guys that got banged up a year ago, they're the things that the guys have to pay attention to. So what we're spending the next month, it's for them, for the players, focus on what you need to do in terms of the weight room and rehab, and make sure you get off to a good start as far as your studies go.
Very good. All right. Now, I always have to ask you a money question when I'm interviewing you. So to wrap it up, the stock market's well over 25,000 now. Where do you see, and I'm not talking about the reasons why, whatever is causing it, and we all hope it continues, but I mean, where do you see it going now since it's crossed that magical 25,000 mark and continues to climb?
Well, we were up well over 20%, depending on what index you're looking at. It'd be hard to repeat 20%, but I think if we continue it all the way we are, I think 10% certainly would be in the card. So between now and the end of 2018, there'd be no reason why we can't hit 27.5, 28.
Whoa!
You want any Bitcoin, Coach?
There's a stock that's a trust that's associated with Bitcoin. The ticker is GBTC. I do own some of that.
I think.
How are your oil shares doing?
The oil, oil has done a nice job in terms of rallying, and the stocks themselves have lagged them a little bit. But oil, remember when we were talking about it, Phil, I think oil was trading about $40 a barrel. Now it's $61 a barrel. So in general, the oil stocks and the energy stocks have done well. The individual stocks have lagged a little bit, but I don't see any reason why they're not going to catch up because they're leveraged to the price of oil.
I know he can't probably have a beer because of his health issue, but I want to go have a beer with you when I'm up in Conway next.
I can have a beer. I can totally have a beer. That wasn't one thing that I had to give up. In fact, now that I'm in better shape, I could probably have more beer.
That's great. Well, listen, we are so glad to hear that you're well and back on the sideline and doing your thing, and look forward to seeing you later on this summer and talking to you many times. Thanks for being with us on a Friday night.
Guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you, Coach. Bye-bye.
Give me more of that guy.
Joe Moglia.
I love that guy.
Well, he told me the first interview way back when we asked to talk to business stuff. It's way over my head, but he mentioned the oil, and like he said, it's $40 a barrel. Now it's $61 a barrel. He said, stay with it. It'll be up. It'll be down. Just ride it out. He says the market's going to hit 27,000, maybe 28,000. Imagine that. Imagine your 401ks, how they're going to look when that happens.
I love that he owns some Bitcoin. It's a diverse portfolio.
He's something else.
You can't grasp your head around Bitcoin, can you?
Not really.
I only barely understand it because
I've heard about it and I've read a few things about it. But
my
I don't know
degree
how...
is only slightly advanced than your Harvard Latta campus degree is. A little slightly advanced.
Right. And that would be a degree from where?
From the University of Missouri.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's really not a degree that you want to brag about.
It's the journalism degree is.
Not really. Who else?
The world's oldest and finest school of journalism.
Just because you're old doesn't make you good.
It means we were there before you.
Well, I mean, South Carolina was there before Southern Cal. Who do people think of first when you say USC?
It's because they're misguided.
That's true.
They're misguided people.
I take my Harvard degree over most anything else out there.
Mm-hmm. You could,
even though it is a figment of my imagination.
You couldn't spell Harvard if I spotted you the H and the D. That's the problem.
You hear that, Brian? You hear the kind of stuff, the disrespect, the dissing. It's unbelievable. Thanks to Coach Moglia once again for being with us tonight here on Sports Talk. Always good hearing from him.
Back to the South Carolina offensive coordinator debate, and again, I want to.
Is there a debate?
Well,
I mean, is anybody else out there questioning it besides? And we're not questioning it, okay? Don't get me wrong.
I think we are questioning it.
Well, I'm not questioning it per se. I'm just saying that
I'm questioning, what does this guy bring you that the previous guy doesn't? That's the thing. Because again, it's one thing to promote from within when you've had success. Like people who are trying to make the false equivalency between this and what Clemson did with Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott, it's not the same. You had success. You had a generational football talent in Deshaun Watson. There's maybe one player on this team that can qualify in that regard, and that's Deebo Samuel.
I'm not questioning it. I mean, I am wondering about it. I'm not questioning it because I believe that Brian is a good coach.
Sure.
And is a smart coach. He relates well to his players. And I think that he'll devise a good offensive scheme, being left to his own and having now Dan Werner to bounce things off of, and obviously input from Bobby Bentley. And don't forget Eric Wolford. I mean, this is a guy that's coached in the NFL. All those heads getting together, and maybe with Roper, it was a closed door policy and he didn't listen to anybody else. McClendon, obviously being a younger guy growing, may take some of the ideas from these others and implement it into one package that will be his. And it'll be successful.
Well, the Werner hire is to satisfy those who wanted somebody who had experience either as a coordinator or at least experience and a pedigree. So that's going to be I use the analogy, like he's like the grandpa. He's the grand poobah now of this offense. He's the guy who McClendon can go to and say, oh, does this work? Does this not work? And so, I mean, you always want to hire somebody, and I know you don't want to hire somebody who basically can serve as your replacement, but he basically is the guy who comes in and says, okay, this will work here. This will not work here with this personnel. That's the one thing that we haven't seen with this group, is that we have not seen the personnel that South Carolina has utilized in the best possible way to make this offense successful. We didn't see that under Kurt Roper. Maybe we'll see it under McClendon. I'm not saying we won't. I'm just saying if you're promoting somebody from within, from a group that wasn't successful, the optics of that are not the best.
Okay, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Take more of your phone calls coming up. We'll also get into some basketball, looking ahead to Clemson and Louisville tomorrow at Little John. Big game for the Tigers as they try to prove that they are worthy of that national ranking. Hey, be sure to check out foundersfcu.com, and you can learn more about how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Thanks again to Joe Moglia for being with us tonight here on Sports Talk. Let's get back to your calls, 800-956-7266. We head to Vern in Bishopville. Vern, welcome into Sports Talk.
How you doing, sir?
Great. Vern, how are you?
Yeah, at first I was glad to see you come back to South Carolina in one piece, but
which one of us? You talking about me or Will?
Both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, both of you went out of town.
Yes, we were both gone, doing our job, covering our teams. Thank you.
Vern was kind of concerned that I wouldn't make it past the border, though. I'm sure.
No, because I think I spoke to you when it first to 2018. But let's cut to the chase. Let's get to the real truth. What really bothers you two? Because he was 34 years old, African American, and stuff, and Will Muschamp already got another black guy running his defense. So that's what really bothers you.
No,
too, right?
No, I don't care if he's black, brown,
Vern,
yellow,
you're a
or
nice
green.
guy.
Come on, man.
You're a good caller, and you're a good listener, and you're a very bright guy. And
I'm
don't.
Bright, too bright.
You don't. I said bright.
Right.
BRIGHT.
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah,
that's
okay. So, I mean, you don't have to go there with us. You know that's not the case. You know that's not true. Why do you even want to bring that up?
Why is that even a concern?
Phil, look at here. And something like that. Now, you just be honest. And something like that. This guy right here, Brian McClendon, he's a young dude.
Yeah.
Must have a real vision for him to run that offense for him.
Has he had a good vision of people who run offense in previous stops or anywhere previous?
We're not talking about Tom, Dick, and Harry. We're talking about Brian McClendon.
Yeah.
Right.
All I'm saying.
You bashing Brian McClendon and something like that. Which he probably, like they say, they don't look.
Do you know who I suggested number one out of the gate that he should go and hire, even though it was probably never going to happen? But do you know who I suggested?
Tell me, sir.
Since you're bringing this up. My suggestion was Kevin Sumlin. Okay.
Kevin Sumlin.
I think you know who he is. Yeah. Okay. Well, but my point is,
he's an African American too.
You're right. So my point is, your argument has no weight because it's totally wrong from that standpoint. The only
right, but you know, Kevin Sumlin's not 34 years old.
So
something like that. But
he's also a guy that knows how to run an offense. Every offense he has touched has turned to gold.
He still got his job at
Texas A&M. Because he didn't win enough. He didn't win enough, which out there winning enough means 11 games a year. I mean, it's almost impossible to reach the goals that those people set.
The priorities at Texas A&M are out of whack, man.
Clifford better be on watch. 2019, Clifford Tigers better be on watch. Carolina go overtake them.
Easy.
I might be dead and gone, but you hear that from me first.
You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere.
Vern, you're promoting a guy from an offense that scored 24 points a game. That was 99th best in the country. 99th. You're around Baylor, which is usually up higher, Miami of Ohio, and Maryland.
Yeah, again, your point, I think, should be well taken. It's a questionable decision from the standpoint of you're promoting someone from a staff that was not productive.
Pittsburgh, UConn, UTSA. These are the schools that are around 100 in the country.
But I'm going to give Muschamp, from where I sit, and it doesn't matter what we think. Our opinion means nothing when it comes to what Muschamp does. He's his own man, his own boss. He makes his own decision. Our job here is to talk about things from our perspective, question things, agree or disagree. That's all simple as that.
I'm not saying it's bad.
And time will tell. History will determine whether or not this was a correct decision. But you are right. His history with offensive coordinators to this point as a head coach has been poor.
I'm not saying he won't have success, and I'm not saying it's not a good hire. I'm just saying it doesn't look good. And if you're somebody who cares about the way things look, if you care about optics, they aren't good. Now, this proves to me that he doesn't care about the optics, and he's proven in the past he doesn't care about optics. But that's fine. I'm just saying, if you wanted to satisfy optics and you want to satisfy people who want a new voice, that doesn't satisfy that.
RJ in Lexington, you're up next with us here on Sports Talk on this Friday night. Hello, sir.
Hey, Corn. Hey, Will. How you guys doing? Will, I think you're a little hard on Corn. I think he could spell Harvard if you at least give him the D.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Vern is going to be, once the Golden Boy, the next Deshaun gets there, Clemson could win 8 or 9 in a row. It could be that bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'm serious about that, Phil.
Yeah.
So, hey, Vern, tune in tomorrow at 1:00 to the Army All-American game and see the next future at Clemson. So I'll say that. But this is my thing about McClendon. He may turn out, Will and Phil, to be a great offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
But Michigan has a really bad offense. That quarterback the other day, Phil, he zeroes in on one guy. He never looks at another guy.
Mm-hmm.
They have, as bad as they are, they even scored 19 points in the first half based on what? 3 turnovers. Look at Carolina's half and then look at their second half. If I'm a football, 95% of the teams in this country are going to win when you give them 5 turnovers in one half.
Mm.
And, I think it was 10, 13, 14 points were direct responsibility off those turnovers. And I hate it for Will Muschamp to base his decision on a half like that. I wish there was no turnover and he'd just come back and score 23.
Mm-hmm.
I think, got a better representation of what was going on. But I just don't know about this. I have no idea. He's a good recruiter. I think he's worked well with the wide receivers, but you get in that in-game situation and defenses are changing. And
I think that when it comes to the extremely important decision about a coordinator, and thank you for your phone call. Recruiting has got to take a back seat. You can be a great recruiter and all that, but you better be at this level. You better be a great offensive mind.
And he answered the question.
I'm thinking about Lincoln Riley, for example.
Yeah.
Is Lincoln Riley a great recruiter? Was
Probably
he known
not.
as a great recruiter?
No.
Was he known as a great offensive mind?
Yeah.
Yes. And look what he's done, both as an assistant and OC at Oklahoma, and now as the head coach.
Well, again,
you've got to have. The Rhett Lashley at Auburn.
Yeah.
Recruiter, no. Learned his stuff under Malzahn, took it to another level as his assistant. Went up to UConn. Now he's on the move again.
Yeah, he went down to.
My point is, people want to say he's a great recruiter, and that's great. That's important. You got to have the horses. I get that, but when it comes to running an offense and calling the plays and making those decisions, you better be. You better be good at that. You better be great at that at this level if you're going to win.
Here's my issue with the whole thing. I know that Muschamp answered the question directly about whether or not Brian McClendon, promoting into this position was about keeping him on staff, and he answered no, it was about putting the best recruiter. That's a bold-faced lie. They were definitely concerned about losing him and losing the relationships that he had. I don't know if that's the best way to satisfy the future of South Carolina football because, again, you're putting a guy in a position who's never done this before. You can't do that, especially when you're promoting him from a staff that only scored 24 points a game.
We go to Will in Ladson. Will, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm fine, Phil and Will. And this has to be contemplated. And this is my point. What do you think that Kurt Roper would still be in Columbia at Carolina if Deebo Samuel and Rico Dowdle had not gone down? Because particularly Deebo started out like a house of fire and the offense was clicking. I'd like to know you guys' opinion on that.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you very much. I will say this. Losing your best offensive weapon outside of your quarterback did not help South Carolina's offensive cause. Now, Deebo individually had a great start with those 4 touchdowns, 2 on kickoff returns before he got hurt. But even with him, the offense wasn't exactly exploding. The positive for McClendon here is that he inherits a junior-senior crowd at the skill position. From quarterback will be a 3-year starter. Deebo comes back, will be a senior with a lot of experience. Brian Edwards will be a 3-year starter.
No one's questioning the personnel. It's questioning the utilizing of the personnel.
But that's going to be a bonus. He's not going to be teaching babies. He's going to be teaching grown men who know the system and know his way. That will be a bonus. Back in a moment.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Part of the reason I'm going to New York and you're not going to New York is because I know how to use a taxi. You don't.
I can do Uber.
You don't know how to do Uber.
No, it's Uber I don't know how to do. I can do a taxi. Hey, taxi! Take me to the airport.
Why you thought you could use Uber in New York?
Take me to the 7th Avenue Deli. That's all I need to know. Airport and 7th Avenue Deli.
No, you got to go to Ben's Kosher Deli, man. That's what you got to do.
My favorite one, the Stage Deli, is no more.
That's a tourist trap.
Is no more.
That's a tourist trap.
To Jack, or is it Jake? Did you say Jack or Jake? Jack on Lake Bowen. Welcome into Sports Talk.
Hey, Phil.
Hey.
Lake Frozen, Jack?
It's getting close. It's doing some. I have seen it happen before. 1977 froze completely solid all the way across. I want to ask you a recruiting question, if I could.
Sure.
Colton Bailey from Chalmers High School quarterback. I know the drawback on him as a quarterback for a major school because of his height. But he's got a tremendous arm. He's fairly fast. He's like a 4.45 40. What is the deal on him as far as playing football?
I'm so sad that he didn't get a chance to play in the North-South game because I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do. I just think it's a size thing. He's very small.
Yeah.
Newberry has offered him, which in their offense, with his skills, that should be a pretty good fit if he decides to go there.
It's just so small.
I just think it's probably just his size. He's not tall. He's not thick. And, unless he went to a service academy or maybe the Citadel, something like that, to run the triple option.
What is he like?
That kind of a quarterback, there's just not a place for him.
What is he like? 5'8", 5'9"?
Yeah, he's just small.
You really can't be shorter than 6 feet.
Yeah,
you really can't.
Unless you're.
I've got 2 letters where I recommended players from Chalmers. I played at Chalmers myself.
Mm-hmm.
Years, and it's been a while.
Did you recommend Debo to South Carolina?
I'm sorry?
Did you recommend Debo to South Carolina?
Yes, I did. And I got a letter from Spurrier, but from one of his, whoever writes letters back.
I mean, what I'm saying, that was a pretty easy recommendation because Debo was pretty darn good in high school. I mean, he's a stud.
And I also recommended Toby Cates, and I got a copy of the letter from Sparky Woods, where they said they're going to recruit him.
That worked out well, too. That worked out well.
I would recommend that they offer him a preferred walk-on. He accepts like that.
To play what position?
I watched him play, and he's really a very intelligent player. I don't think he'd play quarterback.
No.
But what about a slot receiver going across the middle?
Kind of like a Hunter Renfro.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you ought to send them a letter.
Outside the box.
See what they have to say. Thank you very much. Appreciate your phone call. We'll stay on the phone with Joe, who's driving around, giving us a call. Good evening, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Phil. I would say I approve of the hire by Muschamp. It's a good thing that you, whenever you were looking for a new co-host or whatever, didn't use the same kind of high principles that evidently Will thinks that somebody needs to use just to try to get a name. Or I guess maybe he'd still be up in Missouri. I don't know.
I wasn't in Missouri when I got here. I was at a national network before I got here.
He is a name.
I was a name.
He is a name. He's got a big name. Pelagic. Let me see you. Let me see if you can spell Pelagic, and I'll give you the P and an L. Can you spell Pelagic?
With some of his comments, you wouldn't like the way I'd like to spell it. But anyway, the main deal is I do think you got to have a rapport, and you've also got to have a OC that can make changes in the second half, make adjustments. As you saw with the last year national champion, they made no kind of changes during the second half.
Joe
still got throttled both ways.
Joe, if someone's going to fix your plumbing, will you want the apprentice or do you want the founder fixing your sink?
Well, I don't even consider McClendon the apprentice. I don't think he had any say-so in the previous offense. I mean, the man's 2-0 as a coordinator, once for Georgia and once for us. Hey,
don't get aroused by what happens in a bowl game, man.
He's good in bowl games. Let me ask you this then. Okay, so you like it, and that's fine. So what are you expecting from the offense next year? What would make for, of course, you want W's, and you can get W's 3-0, but in terms of production, what should the South Carolina offense average in points and yards next season? That would be a positive acceptance for this regime on offense.
Well, the thing that I would want them to do as far as points scored is one more than the team they're playing.
Okay.
That's really all that matters. It doesn't matter if you win 75-20.
They can't keep leaning on the D. At some point in time in this world of football, you got to be able to score big if you want to win championships. I mean, let's face it.
I think we will see that the players that we have get used to more of their full potential.
Based on what?
I don't think they were used that way. I don't think they were given.
Based on what? What are you basing that off of, Joe?
I'm basing it off the fact that I think that his schemes will be a lot better than what Roper has.
You think?
You
haven't seen anything.
Have you looked in his playbook?
Have you?
Looked? No, I have not. But I certainly know that what we were running hasn't worked, and I certainly think that.
But that's all we're saying.
Given the benefit of the doubt, as like I said, we've given you, I guess.
What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm saying we don't know.
Let me ask you this.
I said I'm going with what you don't know.
Charlie Weiss was a name.
Yeah.
I mean, he had an unreal offense with their name. They just didn't have a defense.
Right.
And how did that work out?
Well,
You're not asking him to run the defense.
Charlie, you talking about when he's at Florida?
Yeah, well, I mean, when he was even at Notre Dame, they actually did have a good offense.
Yeah.
And he was the whiz kid on the New England.
So you're okay. You're fine with this. You would prefer this. Say, I'm just going to throw a couple of names out there. You would prefer this over, say, a Rich Rodriguez,
Brett Lashley,
or Kevin.
I wouldn't have him on the team. There's a reason he got fired quickly.
Well, I'm just talking about I'm talking about an offensive.
Rich Rodriguez didn't get fired for anything football reason. He got fired because of the sexual assault investigation.
Give me something about somebody who's got an offensive system attached to his name, has proven that over the years. You would not prefer that over hoping that this works. I mean, a proven thing over something that's hope. You're okay with that? You're okay with that?
I'm not. I don't think it's a hope. I think it's a good hire. I really do. We could have got the guy from NC State just because he was able to keep it close with Clemson. Is that a real reason to hire somebody?
I
we beat them.
You know,
we scored more than them.
Yeah,
I believe that counts.
You beat them because you had a special teams touchdown and you were able to keep them between the 20s on offense.
But that's a win.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It counts.
It doesn't count if you run a touchdown back when they kick it off. I thought that was the
Will. You're out of bounds there, Will.
Don't
you.
Give me the part. Please don't give me the part about they had 5 turnovers in the second half of the whole game.
I'm with you, Joe.
They caused the turnovers.
That's right.
They did not hike the ball and drop it on the ground and ask us to pick it up.
Would you say that averaging 34 points a game is better than averaging 24 points a game?
If the other team was scoring 32 and 33,
you're talking about having South Carolina's defense, though. If you have an offense that averages 34 points a game, and you have South Carolina's defense averages 21, that's a better formula than having an offense that averages 24.
Okay, thank you, Joe. But he's right. You're wrong. It doesn't matter how you get the points. It counts. The kickoff counted.
Don't jump off my side of the thing.
No, I mean, but you're wrong. And the turnovers count too. A defense produces turnovers, or in the case of Michigan, the guy mishandled a punt. South Carolina recovered. It counts. You can't say
it's what I know versus what I don't know. I don't know what he's going to be. I know what these other guys are going to be. That's
what we've been discussing tonight. Is it okay to roll the dice with something that's an unknown versus going out and hiring somebody who's a known? Muschamp feels comfortable in doing this, and he's going to have to live with it.
It's a lie when he says it's not a gamble, because it is a gamble.
Okay, well, we shall see. Maybe it's a gamble he's willing to take, obviously.
Fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.